This event, Americans for Prosperity of Tennessee have co-sponsored the event along with Tennessee, the Republican Liberal Caucus of Tennessee. And but this event came together, me and Richard, as far as I told Richard, I said, what do you think about an event getting 6 or so legislatures together and talking about stuff that's going on in the Tennessee General Assembly this past year? He said, that sounds great. And I called up my good friend Martin Daniel, and he said, I'm in. Called up Frank Nicely and the rest also, and they're here. Dennis Powers is not here, and unfortunately Senator Massey had some unexpected family obligations that she had to attend to. But we're going to have a great event and a lot of good topics that we're going to be discussing. And thank you once again for coming out. And Mike Howard from the Knox Talk Radios, The Rude Awakening, is going to be the moderator for this event. And if you haven't listened to The Rude Awakening, it comes on from 6 to 9. It's a good show. Check it out. Mike Howard, everyone.
Good afternoon. You have to forgive me. I'm used to standing in a room with only 2 other people, so this is a little... we appreciate you coming out. We appreciate our legislators being here today. Go ahead and give these people a few minutes to finish up over here getting their food, but what we'll go ahead and do in just a moment, we'll start down at the far end of the table there, and we'll have the legislators introduce themselves, give you a little background on themselves. The mic there on the table, just go ahead and pass it between one another. Keep in mind those mics will be hot throughout the entire event today, so if there's something you don't want these people to hear, well, that's what we're going to start with first. Absolutely. I was going to say at the Fox debate a couple weeks ago, they made everybody stand up and take a pledge, but we're actually going to have everybody stand up and take a real pledge that actually counts. So everybody in the room, if you could stand, please, and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wonderful. Thank you. So that's a pledge that actually counts for something. It's hard to back out on that one. All right, we'll go ahead and start. Let these legislators introduce themselves. We'll start at the far end there. Introduce yourself and let these fine people know who you represent, what you represent, and a little bit about yourself.
Good morning. Good afternoon. My name is Jeremy Faison. I have the awesome privilege of representing the most beautiful area in the whole state of Tennessee. That's the 11th District, Greene County, Cotton County, and Jefferson County. I'm a small businessman. My family was here for a little while, and they've gone, but you might get to see them at the end. It's a pleasure to be here. God bless you.
That mic's not hot.
It's hot.
Hello, I'm Martin Daniel. I represent the 18th District of Tennessee. That includes Cedar Bluff, West Hills, Dean Hills, Pleasant Ridge, and Ridgedale. And it's my privilege to represent those areas. I own an outdoor advertising company. I'm an attorney by trade, and I appreciate the invitation to be here today.
Thank you. My name's Frank Nice. I didn't know Martin was an attorney. I'll have to watch what he said. That's kind of scary. I thought he was an honest man. I didn't know. No, I represent Jefferson, Granger, Hawkins, Hancock, Claiborne, and Union County in the state senate. Before that, I was in the House. I represented part of Knox County in the state house for a few years, and glad to be here.
My name is Richard Briggs. Ooh, this one is hot. My name is Richard Briggs. I'm a state senator here in Knoxville. Becky Massey and I represent the majority of Knox County. Randy McNally has a little bit out in Hardin Valley and along the northern part of Carnes and Halls in Powell, but I'm very glad to be here today, and I'm looking forward to answering some of the questions.
Good morning. My name is Eddie Smith, and I represent the 13th District, which starts over at Easttown Mall, goes through the Alice Bell, Belmores, Whittle Springs, 4th and Gill, up through Inskip, Sturkey Hills, through Lonsdale, Sequoia Hills, down to North Shore, and then half of South Knoxville through the Mount Olive and South Dole communities. worked for a number of years in the ministry, and decided to take a chance and try and represent my district in Nashville and bring conservative leadership to this district. And I've had the privilege for the last 9 months to serve in that role, and look forward to continuing that. Enjoy working with all of these gentlemen, and look forward to this discussion today. And I think they're going to tell you there's a note card on your table. If you have any questions, feel free to write that down and turn it into Mike, and we will see what we can do to answer those.
Absolutely. I was going to say that if something comes up that you would like to ask, or a question comes up while you're listening to them answer some of these other questions, feel free. There should be note cards on your table. Fill them out. If you need a note card, just let Richard know, and he'll bring you a note card. Or if you've got one filled out, let Richard know, and he'll go grab the note card from you. We'll pose your question. We've got several questions to start out with, and the first one I guess we'll start with is something that's been in the news recently. Our governor is going around the state talking about a gas tax, a possible gas tax. If you could go ahead and just address that, talk about what you think about that, what you think about the possibility of a gas tax, and where the money might go. We'll go ahead and start back down at the end of the table again.
It's the wrong time to do it. We in America, we work half a year for the money that we've got right now, and half the other half of the year we're paying the government off in some form of taxes. And we can continue the way we're going right now, and in my opinion, it's the wrong time of the year to do this. Wrong time of life for us. I see people out here who are retired, and I have people in my district representing East Tennessee, especially elderly people. They can't afford the drugs that they can't live without. They're struggling to know if they're going to keep the lights on or eat beans and weenies this week. And for me, if it comes to a vote, I'm definitely a no, because the people I represent, they just can't afford anything else.
As I sit here today, I'm against any tax. However, we need to be aware that we have a problem that's coming at us. Okay, we haven't increased the gasoline user fee since 1989. Cost of maintenance and cost of construction have gone up. We've got a problem that's coming at us, and we have to find a solution for it. So I want to see what the governor proposes. I want to talk to the people of the 18th district. But as I sit here right now, I'm against the gas tax.
Well, thank you. I was in the legislature when we raised the gas tax last time. I didn't vote to raise it, but the legislature raised it. Democrats raised it. At that time, they raised it 4 cents. I think that was 1989. They were going to put 4 cents on diesel, but since Governor McWhorter had a truck line, he decided he didn't want a diesel tax, so he waited. He said, "We'll do that next year." Well, it's been 25 years. We haven't raised the diesel tax yet. 1 penny on diesel raises about $6 million. A penny on gas raises about $30 million. And the trucks are the ones that tear up the road. But having said that, since the Republicans have taken over in Nashville, we have abolished the inheritance tax. We have abolished the gift tax. We cut the tax on food twice. We cut the Hall's income tax 3 times. And we have a $600 million surplus this year after cutting all those taxes. I've heard it all my life. Oh, we got to raise taxes. We can't get by. I remember when we had to have an income tax, we just couldn't get by. But we're getting along pretty good by cutting taxes and having a surplus. Technology's a lot better on building roads now than it was in 1989. Diesel fuel's cheap. Diesel fuel's the biggest expense of building a road, running dozers and graders and asphalt. Diesel fuel is the biggest cost of building roads, and diesel fuel's half what it was. We've got technology. Like I told Ron Ramsey the other day, before we start raising taxes, let's try better management at the top. And I'm against the tax.
I'll be honest with you, and excuse my French, but I think we're going about this bass-ackwards. And the reason I say that is that we shouldn't be talking about raising taxes or tolls or whatever people are talking about doing. I want someone to persuade me, first of all, that we need to do something. And I think that what we need to do, they need to go around and they're going to have to show me that, first of all, that something needs to be done. And then let's take that assumption that something needs to be done. I want to know how our road costs are compared to other states. Are we spending too much per mile on roads? We need to know that. I want to know, is the money only being spent on roads? Are we putting in bicycle trails and greenways and all those other things that our tax dollars are going to? I've got those questions I want to ask, and only after you persuade me we really have an infrastructure problem, we really need to do something with the roads, you're not going to be wasting our money, and we're not spending too much to do it, then we can talk about how we're going to pay for it. And there's several ways we can look at paying for it, and this is something that we as citizens have to decide. Do we want to have toll roads? Do we want a bond? And some of these things I don't like either, because really what we're doing is with bonding, we're kicking the can down the road and we're making our kids pay for it. And that's gotten the federal government into a lot of problem, where they've raided some of the other funds. Do we want to raid some of the other funds to do it? Do we want to go into our reserve to do it? Or do we want to mix these things together? Do we want to put out a bond and then back the bonds up with toll roads? Now these are things that we can talk about. I know the AFP sent out a survey, and I mailed mine back in the day I got it, saying I'm against the tax. And but we're a long way from even talking about a tax, because first of all we have to go through the rest of this process, and then we have to decide, do we need to do anything to the roads and bridges, and then we can talk about how we're paying for it, and then we have to be sure that the government's doing it in an efficient manner.
As it sits right now, I am against a gas tax increase. I don't believe that we can, though, look at, in the short time we've got between now and when session starts, to be able to have a true debate and discussion and fact-finding on all the options that need to be on the table. Frank alluded to it. We've got about $550 million of excess funds that we collected this year. So I've got a bill drafted. I signed it yesterday, and I've got commitments from both the Speaker of the House and the Chair of the Finance Committee in the House. And I've got some Senate people that are willing to help as well, which would move $261 million back to TDOT. This helps to repay what the state legislature took out in 2001, 2007 combined. It was a total of about $290 million. We paid back about 29, so it leaves 261. That allows us to, in that bill, it asks the Commissioner Schwartz to come to both the House and Senate Transportation and the House and Senate Finance Committees from the 3-year rolling average of the priorities of road projects that need to be completed, that they're going to use that money for. It allows us to hold TDOT accountable that money is being used with what they say they're going to use it for. So that's a short-term solution. In that time, we need to be talking about what we're going to be doing with infrastructure funding for the state. My concern with just passing a gas tax increase is the district that I represent varies wildly in just median income. And I worry about the single mom that is trying to take care of her children, working 2 and 3 jobs, living on a very fixed income, and we're going to take more of her hard-earned money when she's trying to take care of her children. A gas tax increase hurts the middle class more than it hurts anybody. So I want us to be very careful that if we do something, that it's very strategic and it's at the right time, and not just something because we say we need more money. I'm concerned about just where we are with making sure that TDOT is accountable with the money that they're spending and that it's being used wisely, and that we're not just chartering planes to go 170 miles for certain people and wasting hard-earned taxpayer money. So that bill will be coming forth as we continue the discussion. But as it stands right now, I don't believe we need to pass a gas tax increase at this time. We need to look at other options. And as long as we continue to have excess money, maybe we continue to put those projects. I serve on the Transportation Committee, and we asked the Commissioner for the list of backlog of projects. It's about $6.1 billion. But what struck me when I got that list is they're not prioritized. We don't know what's urgent and we just want it. So the thing I'm going to go back and ask for is I'm going to ask the Commissioner to rank those projects: urgent, high priority, low priority, and we just want it. So that we know what we actually are looking at in the deficit of the road projects that we need to complete.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Representative Smith, hang on to that mic, or we're going to start down with you. One of the questions that's been put through here. Very quick answer. Open carry of long guns, you would consider or no?
Open carry, I don't have a problem with open carry, but I believe the thing you need to think about is, does that make you a target? When you're in an active shooter situation, is that person going to be looking for somebody that has a gun versus if you have a concealed weapon, you don't know who your potential threats are in the room that could take you out. So it kind of, I think the open carry, while I'm not opposed to it, I think it kind of draws attention, whereas the concealed carry, I think that's worked because you don't have a lot of shootings. We have had some. I think back, I was on staff at a church in South Knoxville the morning that the Unitarian Church down on Kingston Pike had the church shooting. It affected us greatly. I mean, we kind of rethought about our process of how we go about just protecting the people that are there. But we didn't put signs on the door saying you can't carry in the church. We just made sure that we had some policies in place for dealing with those situations. I think about we had the attack in Chattanooga where we had the gentleman that was a terrorist that attacked our Marines and our Navy personnel. They didn't have weapons. They were unarmed. So I think when you have an unarmed populace and when you have just open carry, I think it kind of can make you more of a target. But when you have that concealed gun, I think it's less likely that somebody's just going to pick you out right off the bat before they cause greater harm. So I think we need to look through that carefully, but I'm not opposed to it at all.
Dr. Riggs, open carry of long guns, would consider or no?
Open carry long guns?
That's the question. Yeah.
Oh, long guns.
This is on long guns.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll tell you what my feelings are about this, and this is a hard question to answer. I'm not going to try to dodge it at all. I tell you, my heart is that we have a constitutional right as individuals to carry guns. That's exactly where my heart is. That's what I've defended. As some of you may know, I had a bill this year that said that the federal government cannot come into the state of Tennessee and confiscate our guns unless they have the agreement with the Tennessee legislature. That's the first state, I believe, in the country that passed it. I got a lot of phone calls from all over the country on that. So I think that my view on our right to carry guns is absolutely clear. We also know that we have nearly 500,000 permit holders in the state of Tennessee, and I asked Colonel Trott, who is the head of the Tennessee Highway Patrol, what type of gun crimes on those permit holders. He couldn't think of any. He could not think of one of those 500,000 people. So that system is working well. I don't like how much it costs. That's where my heart is. That's what I believe philosophically. On the other hand, if I was sitting here today and I saw 10 Islamic extremists walk into this room with AK-47s, I might feel a little nervous. And do we want... I tell you, this Islamic extremist movement is getting stronger in Tennessee. It's getting stronger everywhere. And do we want to give those people the right to carry AK-47s? And we can't do a thing, the police can't do a thing until they start shooting. Do we want that? I'm just asking. And I think that's where the question gets hard, is not whether I believe we should do it, because I do. But... on the other hand, the world we live in has gotten very complicated.
Senator Niceland.
Well, thank you very much. I'm a bona fide gun nut. I was reloading shotgun shells when I was 11 years old. I remember they were shot all over my bedroom floor. And I don't know any reason now why you can't carry a long gun. There's no reason you can't carry a long gun right now. I mean, it's perfectly legal. I mean, I've carried a long gun all over the whole country. I mean, handguns have always been, and when I was a kid, I never dreamed that we'd have the liberal handgun laws that we got today. I mean, our carry permit is a carry permit. It's open or concealed. I mean, we got 500,000 permit holders, and they've got a better behavior record than our uniformed police. So, I mean, as far as I know, it's legal to carry a long gun right now. I don't know of any reason why you can't.
I own guns. I use them for sporting purposes. I support the Second Amendment. I also thought we all had an existing right to carry long guns, and I support that right.
Thank you. The Second Amendment is clear. We have absolute right to carry a gun, and I'm along with Senator Nicely. I don't believe there's anything in the law that would that would hinder you from carrying that, I would like to take a little jab at abortion on this issue, because that is a right that's been deemed constitutional, and they don't allow the legislature to put anything in that would hinder or slow down a person who would seek an abortion. And that's kind of a right that looks at constitutional, but I notice the liberals are constantly wanting to come up and do everything they can to slow down people getting a gun, which is in the Constitution from the beginning. So it's our constitutional right, and there's no reason anybody should step in and try to make it difficult for you to carry.
This question kind of follows what we were just talking about. This past week, very difficult week for a lot of folks, very emotional week. We saw a horrible event happen in Roanoke. And sadly, within just a few hours after that event, the drumbeat started out of the White House that this was a gun issue. And thankfully, in a moment of clarity, even Donald Trump said this is not a gun issue, this is a mental health issue. With that in mind, starting back down with Representative Faison, looking at this, gun issue, mental health issue, which one do you feel? And if it's a mental health issue, how do we even begin to fix the problem with mental health in this country?
That's a loaded question with a lot of philosophy. It'd be hard to get to it.
That's what I do every morning.
Well, that's good. Mental health has been a part of an issue that my dad fought with for years. My dad eventually took his life. It was a devastating thing for our family. And in America, we are seeing an increasing thing, and I serve on the DIDS board, developmental disabilities and people that are codependent. This might come as a shock to you, but we're going to have to look at emotional illnesses from a better light of just throwing a pill at it. We in America are a group of people who just want to medicate, and put a Band-Aid on it. And I would encourage people to go look at the side effects of a lot of the psychotropic drugs that we're medicating ourselves with. The side effects are ghastly and horrible. What it comes down to, what Trump was saying, really is a heart problem. And there is an issue that we have to understand. Look, there's people who struggle with mental illness. I don't know if it's possible to stop them from getting a gun. But what I do know, and history does prove, that a crazy person with a gun can be stopped by a sane person with a gun. And so as we move forward, accepting and understanding that we have a problem with mental illness in America, first of all, we need to look at it from a basis that maybe we need to, before we just throw a Band-Aid on it with a drug, maybe we need to start looking at it from a different standpoint. There are other things out there, and we have people here from Safe Access. The cannabis plant offers wonderful things for people with emotional illnesses that we're not even touching in America. And we need to look at that. But while we do that, I know the state legislators want to pass laws to stop people who have emotional illness from having a gun. Who's going to decide who's emotionally ill 10 years from now and who's not? But what I do know is that a good person with a gun can always stop a bad person with a gun.
These mass murders are happening with such frequency that it's almost we've almost become numb to their happening. And Charleston was not a flag issue. Virginia was not a gun issue. These are mental health issues. And if it were up to me, I think I would preserve East Tennessee Mental Institute and similar institutions. I think they have a function in our society. However, the majority, those on the extreme right, those on the extreme left, have decided that we need to close these institutions down and we need to treat these people out and try to discharge them into society as soon as we can. I met with Sheriff Jones a couple of weeks ago, and he told me that over 25% of his inmates are mental health patients. So what we need to do, I think, we need to make sure that we don't cut the funding for mental health, as the governor suggested we do this past session. We need to make sure these people are treated, and we have the resources to treat them and hopefully prevent these tragic incidents from happening.
You know, we're all proud of what we've done at the state level on cutting the budget. And I asked the comptroller some time back, I said, where have we cut all this money? It's $2 billion we cut out of the state budget. He said, mental health. Was that a smart thing to do? I don't know. We have 22, some people say 24 veterans a day committing suicide, day in, day out, 22 a day. There were 22 children killed in Connecticut, but we have 22 a day killing themselves. You can't get the real numbers, but a very, very high percent, approaching 100% of our own. One family of drugs, fluoridated antidepressants, Xanax, Zoloft. Y'all know somebody that's on it. Some of y'all probably are. I mean, people get them on the street, the doctor will give it to you. The known side effects, they'll make you suicidal or homicidal. You know, the joke is, the doctor will tell you now, if you feel suicidal, come back and talk to me. If you feel homicidal, I don't want to see you again. I mean, that's pretty bad when it gets to that point. But we need to take a hard look at these drug companies. The doctor may disagree with you, but most of these people, they're getting prescriptions somewhere. And there was a time when doctors would win trips to Hawaii. The more drugs they prescribed, the more trips they got to take their family on. Now, they deny that's happening, of course, don't they, doctor? But I hear that it's still happening. They get rewarded for writing prescriptions for drugs they know is just liable to make 1 out of 100 go kill a bunch of people.
Well, I think I got into the wrong side of medicine because I make my living cutting on people, not writing prescriptions, so I've never gotten any of those trips to Hawaii. But I was on the county commission for 7 years, and I actually sat right next to Jeff Owen, who's sitting here in front of me, and he remembers, I'm sure, very well when Commissioner Varney came to Knoxville and they closed Lakeshore, which was our state hospital. And we were promised at the time that there would be state monies to take care of these people. We could go ahead and turn them loose, but there would be state monies to provide case managers for those people. And it would be safe to turn them out into the community. They could go to Helen Ross McNabb. They would be watched. If they started to see problems, they could either put them in the hospital or I know Frank doesn't like to give them medicine, or you could do something. They really behave pretty well when they're on those things. And then this year in the budget, $10 million was cut out. And basically, they were going to have to get rid of all those managers, and the promises had been broken. We worked very hard to put that money back in there because it's not just $10 million. We got another $20 million federal dollars to match that, which we always get in the past. And so we're taking fairly good use of these people. If you really ask me what I think needs to be done, and I think it would stop a lot, every one of those mass killings are done by mentally ill people. And I'm not so sure that the system we had up until about 30 years ago, where we had the large mental hospitals like Lakeshore, where I think even in Lakeshore at its maximum had around 1,200 patients in it. But at that time, we didn't have these mass killings for mentally ill people. We didn't have a homeless problem. We didn't have 25% of the people in our county jail are mental illness. J.J. Jones will tell you he runs the largest mental institution, the largest mental hospital in the state of Tennessee. And it's a big expense that if we should go back to the old system where, and I think that was the most humane system, rather than these folks living under bridges and doing these things that we read about in the paper. They get three hots in a cot, as we used to say in the Army. They're taken care of humanely. They're fed. They're kept clean. People aren't robbing them. People aren't beating them up. They're not on drugs and having trouble with alcoholism. That's not a lot more humane. We would stop a lot of these killings, and we wouldn't even be having these discussions.
I think you're hearing a common theme, which is we're going to have to find a way in Nashville to put more money into mental health. I think that's key to identifying and getting help to individuals early to try and avoid some of these situations. I want to pause for 1 second because I think one of the things that we all realized this week with the reporters that were killed in Virginia We always applaud our firemen, our police, our medical workers for running into a situation when everybody else is running away. But I think we forget sometimes that our reporters do the same thing. And I think that was evident this week with what happened. So I don't forget to say thank you to our reporters. We may not always agree with everything they write, but they serve a very good purpose in our society because they help turn the light on government when we're trying to do things in the shadows. So thank the reporters. But again, it goes back to finding a way to put funding in for mental health, identifying it early, and that's going to be our biggest challenge. We can't keep cutting and cutting and cutting and expect a different result. We're going to have to change course and do something different with mental health in this state.
Gentlemen, thank you for your answers. And I realize it is a fairly loaded and difficult question, but when you sit here every morning and have to report things like Virginia, like Newtown, like all that we've seen, and then the final story on Friday is that we're getting ready to open a brand new park and playground at Lakeshore. As a guy who has kids and a grandchild, you wonder, well, that's great, except I don't know if I should take my kids over there because I'm afraid something might happen to them. It gets to be very frustrating. We move on to this question. Defunding Planned Parenthood. Now, this thing that's been in the news quite a bit recently. We'll start with Representative Smith again. Defunding Planned Parenthood.
It's no secret that I am 100% pro-life. That was an issue back during the campaign, and I made the statement that I wish, rather than an abortion, that we had other avenues for women to find a way to have that baby, get it a good home. On the federal level, in the state level, we don't take any state money and put into Planned Parenthood. There is some money from the federal government that flows through TennCare. All of our money goes to our health departments for women's services to make sure they get the care that they need. On the federal level, the talk about defunding Planned Parenthood, if there was a way that we could ensure that wasn't going to abortions, but it was going to the women's health services that Planned Parenthood provide, I would be fine with that, but I don't want any federal money. I don't want any taxpayer money going for abortions. That's a choice. But making sure that they have the contraception, making sure that they have some of the mammograms, the pap smears, those are things that help prevent disease. So I wouldn't have a problem as long as the money was going towards those necessities.
I can tell you, anyone that saw those videos about the selling of fetal tissues that wasn't affected by that, I think there's something wrong with you. Just as Representative Smith has said, we did receive a letter from the governor that there's some, I call them sub-vendors that do receive or that do contract with Planned Parenthood for mammograms and pap smears, but none of our tax dollars is going for abortion. I think those are necessary services. My mother died of breast cancer, and I think we do need to provide women with those services. I tell you, my preference would be that we just completely defund it. We need those services, but find somebody else to do it. I really have a bad taste in my mouth over what I saw on selling human tissue. I'm not going to use the another N word that my predecessor in this seat said one time that got him into trouble. If you know what I'm talking about, it's a German political party in the first half of the 20th century. I'm not going to say that word, but it really reminded me of something like that. I think I'll stop right there because I tell you, if you didn't see those videos, you need to see them because they're very, very upsetting.
One of the biggest problems we have in Nashville is getting the things that we've done out to the public. The newspapers don't print it. I mean, liberal newspapers rarely print conservative issues that we've accomplished. But we defunded Planned Parenthood 4 or 5 years ago, and most people didn't know about it. I mean, I don't know how you get the word out, all the good things. I mean, I served in the legislature when the Democrats controlled everything. I am so proud of the legislature we have now. And I just can't tell people, it'd be hard to get a better legislature we have now. But we unfunded Planned Parenthood 4 or 5 years ago. We passed a bill where you can't sell babies, aborted fetuses. But now some people say, well, you can't sell a whole one, maybe you can sell parts. So I don't know, it's just a continuing battle. You just have to keep coming back and addressing it again. But I think you ought to be proud of your legislature for what we have done in the past.
Those were horrific and despicable comments that we saw in those videos. And as Senator Briggs mentioned, Tennessee does not currently fund Planned Parenthood. I would oppose any funding in the future. On a federal level, I support defunding Planned Parenthood. I think they need to get out of the abortion business. Don't really have a problem with their other services that they provide to women, but I don't know how we would guarantee, how we would monitor their rendering of services to make sure that they're not in the abortion business. So I would, on a federal level, I would support defunding Planned Parenthood.
I think it was Justice Louis Brandeis, if I'm right, Frank, you probably remember, he said sunlight is the greatest disinfectant. And as we put sunlight or shed light on Planned Parenthood, we see some pretty horrible things. You're going to see coming out in the news soon where there are girls who are 14 years old who've come in who have been raped or molested, and they're pregnant. And the law says that you have to turn that in to the local DA, to the Sheriff's Department, Police Department, and they've turned a blind eye and performed the abortion. And the girl's person, whoever did that and poured those sick affections out on that girl, was never turned in because Planned Parenthood would choose to just go ahead and do the abortion and keep their mouth shut. We hear a lot of stuff about how they do other stuff for women, but I want to encourage you to do your own study, and you're going to find out that 94% of the money that goes to Planned Parenthood goes to do abortions. Only 5 to 6% does anything else, and I promise you that the health department, your local health department, can pick up that 5%. We need to not only stop it at the state level, which unfortunately all these guys are wrong. I've been doing research. We've looked into it. Actually, Tennessee has somewhere in the neighborhood of $8,000 to $10,000 that went to get a federal drawdown. And Lord willing, we're going to stop that this year. But one of the greatest things we could do in America is to stop funding people who would do such horrible atrocities. There's 500+ million of your federal tax dollars that go to Planned Parenthood across America. We need to suck all of that out and not give them a dime.
Hang on to that mic. We're going to start with you on this next question.
Can I have one follow-up with the first gentleman? He's talking about Planned Parenthood and health funding. Nationally, we hear 700 Planned Parenthood throughout the United States, and we hear 9,000 health clinics that are federally funded. 700, 9,000. Why do we have to give money to Planned Parenthood, period? Put the money into the health clinics.
I'll answer that real quick. Again, it goes back to, and I think it was Representative Daniel said it, if we could find a way to make sure that that money is going for those women health services, maybe Planned Parenthood needs to spin off and create a whole separate company to make sure that that money is going for mammograms, pap smears. There are some communities that those services are needed that they may not have some of those other health services in. So I don't want to just say no, that we can't do that, but again, making sure that somehow we draw a very stiff line between women's health services and abortion with Planned Parenthood so that we can make sure that that money, again, it goes back to turning on the light to make sure we know what's being done in secret isn't done in secret. We know where that money's going.
Thank you. Let's see. Forced annexation was finally added by enactment of PC 707. Forced annexation left scars of checkerboard city limits. How do you propose to mitigate effects of those scars?
Well, to start with, we understand that forced annexation is basically legalized stealing. And there's municipalities who can't pass their budget, and so they decide, well, we can't tax anymore. We're just going to go take somebody's property. We're going to offer them the moon, tell them we're going to do trash, we're going to do sewer, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and then we'll just tax them some tremendous amount that they would have never had to pay in the first place if they'd have done it all themselves. So we've done great strides. I'll tell you this, in Tennessee, 3 years ago, we had the worst laws in America. We were worse than California, the land of fruits and nuts, when it came to forced annexation. My gosh, that's terrible. But we have made great strides here in Tennessee. We're continuing to move, and I think everybody on this panel up here has been behind that, doing their best to make sure we put freedom back and ownership back in the people's property where they are and let you keep your property. So moving forward, it's a sticky situation. Some of our colleagues are scared to death of elected officials at home. You need to be careful who you elect to represent you in your city council and your county commission and all that, because they fight often. When we try to bring freedom back to the people, they come up there and fight hard. So moving forward, it takes a team effort. It takes people like you to make sure who you vote for in your city council are people who care more about your freedom than others. And we will do our part when we get there.
You know, Tennessee, I hear everywhere we go, we appear at events like this, that Tennessee is now a very business-friendly state. And I'm very proud of that. And it's been that way since 2010, since the Republicans took over the legislatures. And I think one of the most serious business issues that we have in the state of Tennessee is restrictive municipal zoning ordinances. Okay, and to prevent those from being put in place, we need to restrict annexation. So I serve on the Civil Justice Committee, and Mike Carter, a former judge from Bradley County, one of the first bills that's going to come out of the box next year will be a bill that will allow areas that are within city limits to de-annex themselves. It's awesome. I support it totally. Please elect those city council people that are not enthusiastic about annexation, and we'll do our part in the legislature.
You know, I never would have dreamed that we could pass that. And we need to give credit to Mike Carter. He did the best job. I don't know anybody. I could not have done it. The 10 fastest growing cities in America annexed by referendum. Now, a lot of these cities think, well, if you let people vote, they're never going to vote to be annexed. Well, if that's true, how are the 10 fastest growing cities in America growing by having referendums on their annexation? I'll tell you how they do that. They do what they say they're going to do. If they tell a community, we're going to give you sewer, gas, and fire protection and police protection, and they actually do that, then the next little community they want to annex will go along. But you can't lie to people, tell them you're going to give them all this stuff, and never do it. But that's what I want you to remember. The 10 fastest growing cities in America annexed by referendum. That's what we do in Tennessee now. And so what it takes is credibility from your municipality.
You know, I think Senator Nicely and I agree on that. It's not that annexation is bad, because there's communities that come to you and they say, you know, we want to get our sewer, we want to get city water, we want to have garbage collected, but they voted on it. There's a referendum on it. And we have a bill, and it's going to come up. I was on state and local government. We had a whole session this year on that committee dealing with annexation and de-annexation. And a lot of that comes from back here in Knox County when there were a lot of forced annexations. And what this bill would allow is that these areas, you can't do it street by street, but if it was annexed en bloc, you know, as one large area, those people that live in there, if they feel that the services they've received and the promises that were made weren't carried out, they will have the right to de-annex themselves from the municipality that annexed them. Now, we are going to have, there is a stipulation in there that if the city did come in and they bonded to put water or sewers or electrical services in there, is that if the community de-annexes, they can't keep the stuff and not pay for it, and they will have to pay back that part of it. But there will be a provision where they can de-annex themselves from the municipality. I thought it was going to pass this year, but it didn't. But I think it will pass next year. And having sat on the Knox County Commission, and many of our neighborhoods were in jeopardy of being annexed. And a lot of that stopped in 2001. We had it was a little bit of a complex law, but we have the Urban Boundaries Agreement. I think that expired in 2010, and we've not had any of that. But this is something that's going to come up at the state legislature, and I think we will see a de-annexation law pass.
I think anytime you can let the people vote and decide for themselves, you're better off. Just forcibly taking someone's property, removes their rights, and I do not support that. So I am 100% for banning forced annexation, but allowing people to vote, whether it's in the community, whether it's a block by block, to be able to come into a city for those services, then they have made that choice themselves, and they have taken on that burden for the additional taxes themselves. So I support stopping forced annexation, but I also support allowing communities to vote and have the referendum to be able to add themselves if they choose.
Just to let you know, too, we've got about 30 minutes left for questions here, so if we can hold all the applause to the very end. I know you guys are excited about some of their answers, but we're going to try to get as many questions in as possible. This has got to be my favorite question of the day so far. At the age of 67, I'm getting really tired of getting carded when I buy beer. What's the likelihood of cutting this nonsense out? Representative Smith.
The youngest guy on the panel.
I think it goes back to, look at the fact that I can think of several friends that I had in high school that had started turning gray in high school that were well under 21. So I think keeping the carding in is going to protect everybody all the way around. Does really taking your wallet out for 10 seconds just to prove that you are the age you are, is it that big of a burden? I think it's just protecting our kids across the state more.
My wife doesn't drink beer, but she's sort of flattered by it when they do that to her. I don't know. The most important thing we need to do really is to stop the underage drinking. I don't know. I don't think. I'm looking at Andy Andrews back there, and I don't think he and I are going to have too many people wondering who we are and how old we are. But maybe something needs to be looked at that. I don't know. I don't drink myself, so I don't ever have that problem. But I'll let some of the others answer it. I don't know how much of an offense or how much problem it is because I've never been carded.
We had a law at one time that said if you're obviously over 50, they didn't have to ask for your card. Then we passed the wine at the grocery stores, and liquor stores put that back in that you did have to be carded, regardless of how old you were. And then I think we passed a bill since then, going back and said, no, if you're obviously over 50, you don't have to be carded. So I think that's the way it is now. If you're obviously over 50, you don't have to be carded. But some of the establishments, rather than take a chance on it, they tell their hired help, the single mother at the cash register, just card everybody. Don't try to make a decision on it. Just card everybody. So if the owner of the company says card everybody, the little owner's got to card everybody. But state law is if you're over 50, obviously over 50, that you don't have to be.
These laws are just a prime example of how government can get in our face and cause us trouble and irritation. Ryan Haynes had a bill this year which was approved and is now signed into law that excuses vendors from carding where someone appears to be 50 years of age or older. I wouldn't mind seeing it go down to 40 years of age or older, but ultimately it's just up to the vendor or the bar owner as to whether to card someone.
We have way too much authority in government. We have monkeyed with people's rights and their liberties, and I'd like to encourage people that are interested in this, look, we're not stopping underage drinking by that silly law. People have fake IDs. People would do everything they can, and what we're doing is we're frustrating gentlemen like in that red shirt right there who want to stand up and say amen. We're aggravating people, and you know what we need to do? We need to get government out of your life. Government is too deep in everybody's life, and there's too many regulations. You just need to get them out. I'd like to repeal the law. Yeah.
There you go. Just for note, if any of you all came into my store, I'd card all of you, including you, Dr. Briggs. Carjo. Let's see. Here you go. The lovely Insure Tennessee. Controversial piece of legislation this year's session. Insure Tennessee. Some of you on this panel supported it. Others opposed it. Briefly talk about the decision you made and why you made that decision. Start with you, Representative Faison.
That's an excellent question. Figured it would come up today. America has evolved and progressed greatly in a downward spiral when it comes to health care. Ever since we got the government involved with health care and insurance. It's been a disaster. And unfortunately, every time the federal government passes another law that deals with health care, it just gets worse. We can prove by looking at other countries that socialized medicine really lowers the standard of care. That being said, I'm going to surprise you because Republicans have done a horrible job. Conservatives have done a horrible job helping the cause of health care in America and in Tennessee. My party can sit on the side and tell how bad socialized medicine is and how bad single-payer system is, and we just sit there and we don't offer any real viable alternatives. And that's probably why we're at where we're at today. We're going to have to do something. I represent a vast majority of people who don't have better access to health care right now other than basically a Band-Aid or emergency care. I represent people who fall between the time that they've retired around 55 to 64. They can't get access to health care. And I've sat and talked with individuals that if they don't get certain procedures done, they will die. For me, we live in America, this greatest country ever in the history of planet Earth. Surely we can come up with something that we can do to help these people who are falling through. It's not a huge majority of people, but there's a strong majority, especially in East Tennessee, that have no access to care. They can't pay for anything. So, I've been 100% against Obamacare, and I'm against socialized medicine. I would like to see us where we help doctors get through medical school and say part of what you do when you come through medical school, you're going to do pro bono work, for a legal term. But you're going to do pro bono. We've got to do something, but I'll be the first to admit that I don't have the answers, neither do the rest of the Republicans. But I also know that Obamacare is not the answer, and putting Tennessee in the risk of millions and millions of dollars a year to take care of people, that's probably not the wisest thing for us to do. And I wish I could do a better job at answering that, but I do know that every time government gets involved, our problem gets worse.
Jeremy, you're absolutely right. I can't name one federal program that it does well. I mean, take a look at Social Security. It's a mess. Income tax, a mess. Why do we need another large federal program getting in our faces and establishing rules and imposing taxes? It doesn't make any sense. We do have a problem. You're right, we do have a problem. We need to address it. I want to talk with Dr. Briggs about this and other legislators, but I have a plan that I'm not ready to unveil right here, but a plan to make health care a little more competitive here in Tennessee, and we'll be talking about that a lot in the next few months. But I oppose Insure Tennessee, and I think it's a bad idea.
Not a single Republican voted for Obamacare in Washington. Now, we have some pretty liberal, sorry Republicans in Washington. Even the sorriest of the Republicans in Washington voted against Obamacare. And then the governor wants us to expand something that even the worthless Republicans in Washington voted. I mean, sometimes I wonder, why would he ask us to do something like this? Then on the other hand, if you're a state employee or a retired legislator, you can keep your insurance. You may have to pay the lion's share. You might pay 80% of it when you leave, but you can take it with you. The governor came up with a bill last year, and it passed. I railed against it, but it passed anyway. And say you work for the state till you're 55, and you retire after 30 years. In the future hires and future legislators will not be able to take their insurance with them. And I think that's terrible. I had an amendment that said if a state employee or a legislator retires or quits or gets beat, whatever, if he's willing to pay 100% of his insurance plus 2% administrative costs to pay for the state to handle the paper, then they should be able to take their insurance with them, called portability. I mean, we're all talking about portability. Let your insurance go with you. But the governor and his district has fought it and killed it. So right now, a future legislator gets elected this next time, spends 10 years in the legislature. When he leaves, will not be able to take his insurance with him, even if he pays 100% plus 2% administrative cost.
How about them Vols? I'd like to talk about something else, but I am going to talk about Insure Tennessee, and if any of you don't know, I was one of the Republicans that supported it. And I think sometimes if you look at all the details on things, is there anybody here on Medicare? Anybody over 65? There's a few people here. See, is it really that bad of a program? I mean, do you have to get government approval for it? Is it like your private insurance? I guess maybe I have. I'm a medical doctor, for any of you that don't know. And I know dealing with insurance companies, both, I'm not on Medicare, and I know when I have to get something approved for myself personally, it's really difficult, and it's really difficult for our patients. I don't get paid as much when I treat Medicare patients, but basically, I decide what's wrong with them, I put them in the hospital, and they get taken care of, and they're not hassled. So I don't think all government programs are bad, and we get paid within a couple of weeks. The details that a lot of people don't understand about Insure Tennessee is how it's paid for. There was just slightly under $500 million, a little bit under $500 million a year that's taken out of Medicare to pay for Insure Tennessee. I mean, you know, the program that Insure Tennessee draws their money on. What that means is that the hospitals, what the federal government said is that we're going to pay the hospitals and the doctors 10 or 15% less than we paid them in the past, because we paid them more than we wanted to pay them to make up for the people with no insurance. And it didn't matter if they took Obamacare or Insure Tennessee or what the other Republican states have taken, that money's coming out. And our doctors and our hospitals are getting paid less than what they got paid in the past to make up for that. Now, the deal was then is that the government would give that money back to them. They said, well, everyone's going to be insured because everyone will have, and so the hospitals will get their money back and they'll be able to stay in business. And some of us don't realize that, but that's what Insure Tennessee does. It lets us get back that money that's been taken from us already. And it does not cost, everybody says it's going to cost us millions. It doesn't cost us millions. It doesn't cost the Tennessee taxpayer or the state of Tennessee anything. We started several years ago where we put an assessment of 4.5% on the hospitals. It was a tax the hospitals put on themselves for revenue. We increased it this year to 6%. The money that comes out of that is going to be about $150 million. That allows us to receive the match that the federal government would give. It doesn't cost the hospital, the Tennessee Hospital Association pays all of that. It doesn't cost the Tennessee taxpayer nothing. Anyone that read the 21-page waiver that was submitted to, they call it the Center of Medicare and Medicaid Services. Article 19, paragraph 2 says that if the federal government doesn't live up to their obligation, or if the Tennessee Hospital Association, through the assessment, does not live up to their obligation, the program is terminated. And people said, well, we've never terminated a government program before. We have. We just enrolled around 180,000 people in 2006 from TennCare. Was it painful? Yeah. Did people like to do it? Yeah. But, you know, that's the real world. If you can't afford it, you can't have it. We did welfare reform in 1996. Where we basically did away with the welfare program for men who don't want to work. So we've had large government programs, and this is part of it. If it ever costs the Tennessee taxpayer any money, it ends. There is no, and people don't understand that. We've already paid for it. If you look, there were 22. The biggest chunk comes from the money, the almost $500 million a year that's taken out of Medicare. If you look at that, plus a lot of other fees, most of those don't affect us directly. There was a tax on medical devices. There's a total of 22. Between 2015 and 2022, there's $900 billion of monies that come from those. This is money coming from Tennesseans, and this is money we're paying. This is money that we're not getting. and it goes back. There's a reason, if you're in private business, somebody has to pay for these things. And people say, why are you for it? I disagree with a lot of my friends out here who says, let them come to the emergency room, we'll treat them for free. Let's give it free. Let's give it free. Under Insure Tennessee, they have to pay premiums every month. If they miss their premiums for 2 months, the Briggs Amendment on the Insure Tennessee says they're kicked out of the program. They don't get it anymore. They have a $75 copay they have to pay if they come in the hospital. They have an $8 copay if they go to the emergency room. They go to pick up a prescription, depends if it's generic or a brand name. They have to pay $1.50 or $3 for it. I think people should pay. I don't believe in give it to them free. I disagree with my friends out here who say just give it to them free. I think there's a problem in Knox County where Baptist Hospital had to close because of uncompensated care. I think there's a problem that St. Mary's is closing because of uncompensated care. I think there's a problem that the Scott County Hospital closed because of uncompensated care. We have to pay for all that. Some people think that, well, if we don't pay for it, it's free. It's not free. Someone has to pay. And I know the devil's in the details, and I could go on and on, but that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
When we were in the special session, my first week there, I did a lot of listening. And when you go back and look, they said 200,000 people, $1.4 billion. By the time we got to the special session, it was between 280 and 307,000 people at $1.4 billion. Now, how do the numbers increase by almost 107,000 people and the dollar amount doesn't change? That did not make sense to me. So I just started thinking, is there a different way we can look at this? So I started looking at the TennCare numbers. TennCare cost the state $10.3 billion to cover about 1.4 million people. Insure Tennessee, let's just say 280,000 people at $1.4 billion. So I just did the math. If I wanted to get Insure Tennessee to 1.4 million people, what would the cost be? $6.6 billion. So that's almost $4 billion less than what we're paying for TennCare now. So conservatively speaking, let's say it's 8.3 for what we have now. If we applied Insure Tennessee to TennCare, then that would leave us about $2 billion. We could cover the additional people at $1.4 billion and be able to write a $600 million check back to the federal government. So how do we do that? The best way to do it is if we can be the innovators in this state by receiving a block grant for Medicaid funding. Let us control it in this state. Remove the mountain of regulation from us. Let us affect the change here and not be told what to do. We know best in our communities and in our state how to help our people. Remove the regulations telling us what to do and let us do it.
This question, policing for profit, also known as civil asset forfeiture, has been a huge issue across the country and the state, with horrible stories of people's rights being violated without due process. Senator Nicey, along with several others in the Tennessee General Assembly, introduced various legislation this year to do away with it. Is it time to do away with this in Tennessee like New Mexico did this year? And if so, will you be willing to say that you'll stand with one of these legislatures and co-sponsor one of these bills?
I agree with Senator Nasley, and I would support his bill.
I agree with Senator Nicely, and I'll support his bill.
I agree with Senator Nicely.
And civil asset forfeiture.
Now, we had a bill last year that was going to address this, and the Commissioner Trott and the main commissioner, I can't even remember his name, from Memphis, Gibbons, they came in and they went on and assured us that it never happens. It just all blown out of proportion. And so we said, well, we'll wait till next year and see what happens. Well, right after that, some nice lady over in Sevier County inherited some money from her grandmother. She bought her a car and it had $8,000 or $9,000 cash left on it, and they took her money. Well, we do have a problem, and we're going to have to address it. I mean, I represent 6 rural counties. I deal with people that sell their tobacco in the fall of the year. They have a water case. They buy cattle. They go to stockyards. They sell their cattle to the pin hooker for cash, so they don't have to pay the income tax. And they deal in cash. I mean, they might have bib overalls, and that bulge is not their pocket watch. That's a wad of hundreds they've got up there in that bib overall. They stop one of these guys on the road, they'll take their money. They assume that if you've got cash, you're a criminal, you're a drug dealer. But in the real world, you'd be surprised how many people in the country don't have checking accounts. They deal in cash. If they want to send something off, they'll buy a money order, send it off. And so many times our leaders don't realize the real world out here, and that's where I come in.
Policing for profit, civil forfeiture is one of the most outrageous government practices I can possibly imagine. I assume that your bill would eliminate civil forfeiture. Is that right?
Yeah.
I support your bill. However, as a practical matter, when you get to the legislature, the sheriff's associations, the Highway Patrol Association, the Police Association is going to be opposing this. So we need to find a way to counter their opposition. I fully support elimination of civil forfeiture in Tennessee.
Last year I was eating breakfast at a little restaurant in Cotton County, and an elderly gentleman walked up to me and said, "Jeremy, the Highway Patrol has my truck sitting down there at their place impounded, and I need to get it back." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "My son got stopped by the Highway Patrol. He had drugs in the car, and they impounded him, and they impounded my truck, and it's in my name." So started doing a little working on it. He got an attorney. The attorney told him it was going to cost $8,000 to represent him to the Department of Safety to get his truck back. I called the commissioner, and the commissioner's like, "Well, yeah, Jeremy, it's bad that his son was in that truck." I said, "Are you serious?" And he said, long story short, I pitched a mortified fit. He got his truck back. But I thought how crazy it is that he would either have to get a half-crazed legislator who can affect their budget or pay $8,000 for an attorney for something that was his. Can you imagine this guy sitting here with a UT shirt on, just walk up and slap him, and he's mad at him, he says, "Well, you slapped me, someone will just take your card, your phone, and your wallet, and turn around and walk off." The government feels like somehow, if they've been offended, they just have the right to steal from you. The rest of us in Tennessee, if we go and take something that's not ours, we go to jail for it. We have to pay restitution. Our government's not paying restitution. They can hold it as long as they want. They take it from us. It's called legalized stealing. If Frank's bill doesn't work, we're going to come up with another bill. We're going to do everything we can. We've been fighting them. I've been there for 5 years, been fighting them every year. But luckily, y'all have sent us some more recruits. We've gotten rid of a lot of liberals who fought us on this, and we're going to come after them this year like they've never seen before and stop the stealing that the government thinks they're justified by doing.
Start right down to Representative Faison on this one. Tennessee joined a few other states that have passed cannabis oil legislation. What are your thoughts on this law, the potential it has to help patients suffering from a host of conditions?
Well, that was actually my bill, so I'm glad you came to me first. I could speak for hours on this subject, but I'm not going to because y'all want to go home. I'll tell you this. The Lord gave us a plant that we have demonized for the last 70 years in America. And we probably demonized it because big people have bought legislation with deep pockets and they don't want the competition. But I want to pose a question to you. Anybody in here who thinks it's crazy that we should use the cannabis plant, whether the hemp form for fabrics and resins or whether the marijuana form for medicine? How is it okay that we take opiates out of a field and go to a lab, pervert it, and bring it into a way that you will rob your own mom or sell your own kid to get to that opiate once you get addicted to it? As long as a dude in a little white jacket says it's okay and you go to a pharmacy and they have it there for you and you start taking these opiates that have been perverted, and somehow we as a society think that's all right, and our babies are born with neonatal abstinence syndrome, and there's a myriad of ghastly side effects that come from pain pills in our country. We prescribe 90% of the world's prescription of opiates right here in America, and Tennessee is way high. And somehow we just think that's justified and okay. We as a Christian nation, well, we're not doing marijuana. Listen, when's the last time you ever heard a person selling their child or robbing their own mom to get to cannabis? My goodness, we have got to change the way we think of that plant. You go to any other industrialized nation in the world, they're doing it right. Found out recently that Israel is using the cannabis plant for all types of stuff. Frank Nice has told us this morning we have 22 military men with PTSD committing suicide every day. How dare us? Say it again.
Now up to 30.
Now up to 30. How dare us stand in the way of them with a plant that God gave us that has no known side effects? I'm very passionate about this issue, and as long as I'm in the Tennessee legislature, I will be continuing to move forward that we do everything we can to allow people to use the cannabis plant for whatever they want to use it for.
Well, I was proud to co-sponsor that cannabis oil legislation with Representative Faison. I'm glad to do so, and I see some folks here today that supported that, and I appreciate you being here today and speaking up on that bill. But I'm just going to make the jump to medical cannabis, medical marijuana, and say I'm open to it. I think we need some more testing. We need to make sure that the kids are not going to get it, minors are not going to get it. We need to control the prescriptions, but I'm open to taking a look at it.
Well, I don't know what I have to say. I'll tell you a little story. I run out of something to say. I just tell stories. Well, I had a heart operation. I had a valve repaired a couple of years ago, and they put me on a medicine called Copacetin. Copacetin is made out of meta saffron, which is a flower that grows out in somewhere, flowers. And they talk about this stuff in the Roman and Greek medical books, 1500 BC. They've been using this meta saffron 3,500 years. Benjamin Franklin had the gout and also treats gout. When he came back from France, he brought the seed with him, started raising it himself to treat his own gout. Well, the pill just cost 9 cents a piece. And then the DEA and FAA, one of the alphabet soup, DEA probably, they said, well, this thing's never had a study. We've just been using it 3,500 years. We've never done a study. So they told the company that was making these 9-cent pills, if you'll spend $50 million, we'll spend $50 million, and we'll let you charge $5 a pill. So they did the math. That seemed like a good deal. So now then, if you go buy a 9-cent pill, it'll cost you $5 a pill, thanks to your own government.
Well, I may end up with a minority opinion here. First of all, let me say I was a co-sponsor in the Senate with Becky Massey on the cannabis oil, but that was they called it I wish they'd call it a CBD oil, because that's what you use to treat seizures in young children that have intractable seizures. Some of those kids were having 15 or 16 or 17 seizures a day. They had failed all the standard medical treatments. There is one of the plants, it's known as Charlotte Webb, of the marijuana plant, that has a very high concentration of CBD. It has a very low concentration of THC, which is what people smoke the marijuana for to get high. And to me, I wish they wouldn't have called it, quite frankly, I wish they wouldn't have called it the cannabis oil. I wish they'd have called it a CBD oil, because I think that more accurately describes what's in it. Again, I'm against the marijuana. By the way, opium's a natural plant. I don't think anybody should just get whatever they want to of opium because it's natural. Cocaine is a completely natural plant. I don't think everybody should just go down there and be snorting cocaine and smoking crack cocaine. I'm against the people using the meth labs, all of those things. I think they're bad. I'm sorry. You asked me about the regular marijuana plant. I think there probably are some ingredients and some doses that are helpful to people. If you ask me what I think should be done, I think the DEA and the FDA should change it from a Schedule I drug, which is the same as heroin. I mean, we could legalize heroin too if we want to, I guess. But I think they should allow the medical institutions to study it. They can separate out what the ingredients are in it. As a medical doctor, they say, well, look, college kids have been smoking marijuana a long time. They do fine with it. Well, I want to know what are going to be the effects of people who are 75 years old that maybe have heart trouble or have had strokes or they're on, and believe me, people are on 10 or 15 different medicines these days. I want to know what the effects are with all those medicines. Almost anything we give, including aspirin, can interact with medicines. I don't know what the interactions are. I don't know the best way to administer it. Do we put it in an oil and you swallow it? Do we put it in cookies and you eat it? Do we put it in an inhaler to give it that way? I don't know what doses to give for it. I don't know what interactions it's going to have. I don't know how it affects older people that already have had heart attacks or strokes or have problems. When those questions are answered, and I know how many milligrams to write, you write for 20, 50, 100, I don't know. Is it completely safe? I don't know. Do we know what it does to old people? No, we don't. If we ever sort that out and people can come back with us after doing, I believe in science, you know, I'm sorry, I do. I believe in science, and I do believe that medicines are dangerous. When we come back, aspirin will kill you. Believe me, you take too many aspirins, you can bleed from your stomach and die. When we know all of those things, I'm willing to go back, and when we sort out the different components of marijuana, and we show they work in some people, then I'm perfectly willing to look at it. But until then, I am not for drugs. I'm against completely legalizing cocaine. I'm against legalizing crack. I'm against legalizing methamphetamines. I'm against legalizing heroin, because I think those drugs are dangerous. I asked Colonel Trott again. He's the head of the Tennessee Highway Patrol. Same question that I asked about the guns a little earlier. We had about 970 deaths last year on our highways from car accidents. We had 1,300 deaths from prescription drug overdoses, and that's a crisis. And I mean, we got so many people high on driving drunk, driving on all these other things. We don't need a lot of people driving around high on marijuana. I think, quite frankly, cell phones are more dangerous than all of them, but that's a whole other story. But I think we need to approach this scientifically than just saying let everybody take everything and get out on the roads and doing away with speed limits and drunk driving and all of that. I just think those things are not good.
I think you have to look at the science and let the science tell you whether or not it's harmful or helpful. We have a drug problem in this country that are prescription medications. The Metropolitan Drug Commission that I was at a few months ago, the average age that children now start experimenting with prescription pills is between the 6th and 7th grade. That's young for them to start experimenting with readily accessible prescription pain medication. Had a conversation with some folks earlier just about medical marijuana, some of the studies that are being done. Israel was referenced that's going on there. We've asked to see that study. We want to look at the studies against it. I want to see everything, both pro and con, on this issue to be able to say, here's what the facts are, and here's what we need to do. I proudly supported, and voted for the cannabis oil bill because Jeremy brought through the legislature this year one of the children that was suffering from the intractable seizures. She was having 1,200 or something a week. I mean, a lot of seizures. And this medication and the CBD oil helped stop that. So I think there's some viable things that we can look at with it, but we have to make sure that it doesn't become readily accessible for children to get their hands on any more than what we need to make sure that the prescription drugs are not accessible for those children.
We've got about 10 minutes left here. We're going to try to get through as many of these questions as we can. The EPA water control just got thrown out of several states that sued. Tennessee was not one of those states. Are you going to push to get Tennessee out of the EPA water controls?
I have signed the bill asking the Attorney General to fight that.
So did I. So did I.
I have too, and this is just overreach, federal government overreach. It's outrageous. I oppose it, and I hope the Attorney General will file suit to oppose this EPA regulation.
There's a few areas in D.C. I'd like to see us just shut down and give back to the states. Department of Education, right up there along with EPA. We have a thing called the 10th Amendment of our U.S. Constitution. They really have no business telling us what's going on here in our state. So, would you like to see the padlock and the lights go out? Make me feel good. How about you?
This is kind of, I guess, along the same line you're just touching on there. Positives and negatives of school vouchers. Your thoughts?
I have historically supported charter schools. I've seen some validity to it across America and in Tennessee where they can help. For me, I'm scared to death of vouchers going to private schools because I believe once the government starts sending some of the money that appropriates through their hand back to an area, it will destroy a private school. And my children, they're all back there. I've got 5 of them here today, and that's my wife. I pay for my children to go to school for a reason that I want something different for them. The biggest thing I want different from them is that the government's not teaching them. I like a private education, and I maybe probably disagree with the rest of the guys. I don't know where they stand, but probably don't agree with me. But if we start giving private institutions vouchers, the government's going to control them, and we'll no longer have private institutions.
I'm for maximum choice when it comes to education, and I support a limited voucher program, especially for the kids who are economically disadvantaged and at schools that are underperforming. I think we can start there, take a look and see how it goes with them, and then expand the program in the future if it works.
I had a voucher bill about 20 years ago, but Representative Faison is exactly right. No self-respecting private school will take vouchers because it's just a matter of time until it's no longer a private school, it's a public school. And then you've got the other problem that the other states, you look what happened to other states. Florida, I mean, the lion's share of the vouchers go to Muslim schools. And, you know, I don't think that's good. So, there's one other thing I was going to say, I can't remember what it is.
I think my sentiments on this are pretty close to what Representative Daniel just talked about, in that I do support parent choice, and you know, you do have to have some sympathy for parents that their kids are going to failing schools or getting a poor education, but they really want their children to do better. Where they can take their own taxpayer money that's being paid already, I mean, and then they can take them to a private school. I think it makes even the public schools then start to compete. They're either going to get better or they're going to disappear. I like the idea of starting it slowly. We can evaluate it as it goes forward. I have no problem with expanding it if it's working. If it's not working and it's doing some of these things, or if some private school doesn't want to participate, they don't have to. But I think that every child, I mean, the one thing that I do believe in, I don't believe that we need income redistribution or any of these things that some of these people are talking about, but every child, there should be equality of opportunity. And if their parents really are concerned and they want them to learn, they ought to have the opportunity to go to a better school than what they're forced to go to through the public education system.
Likewise, I support the limited voucher plan for the very same reason. And I said this to both Representative Bill Dunn, who carried the bill, and the committee that I serve on in education, which is, if we see it succeeding, then we can continue to expand it. However, if it is not succeeding, we need to roll it back. We do not need another government program that's going to continue to be failing and just wasting money. I looked at vouchers as the same way I look at charter schools, public schools, private schools. It's one more arrow in the belt for parents to have a choice to be able to help their children with their education. It's not taking away from anywhere else. It is helping. And the voucher bill that we had actually would have left some of the state money with the district that student was reserved for, even though they received the voucher. So everybody kept saying it was taking all the money away. It did not. It left some of the money with the district that the student was in the district that they were zoned for.
I thought of what it was I was going to say. Once again, I'm against vouchers. What I am for is open enrollment. I think that as long as your child is a citizen of Tennessee, you ought to be able to enroll them in any school that you can get them to. Don't worry about school buses. If you can get your child to a school and that school has room, across county lines, across district lines, I think you ought to be able to put your child in any school that you can get them to, as long as they have the room. And that'll put the pressure on these bad schools. The best schools in most of these counties are the ones closest to the private school. I know in like West Knoxville, for example, that's an easy example. And they said, well, you got all these Oak Ridge kids. But even in my county, in Claiborne County, I have 6 rural counties, and only one of them is the school system is making its average annual objectives, AMOs they call it. And that's one thing wrong with education. It got too many the acronyms and stuff. I can't remember them all. But the best school in my whole district is the one closest to the private school, Frank White Academy. Frank White Academy up LMU is a top-notch school, and they're doing a great job, and the schools around it have to be good. So what makes these public schools do good is some competition from a real good private school right close to it. Thank you.
Sure. Quick follow-up to that. Gentlemen, everybody here on the panel, is everybody a product of public schools here on this panel? Private, so 2, 3. Is there any hope of ever getting back to making our public schools good again? Or have we just given up?
Yeah, let me touch that. There is absolute hope, and I'll tell you something. The government needs to get out of the way. Our local people know how to do our education a lot better than we do in Washington, D.C. or Nashville. Every governor since I've been born and every president thinks they have the mojo when it comes to answering education. Well, they don't. The locals people know how to do it. We had President Bush with the No Child Left Behind, and then we had Obama right on the heels of that with Race to the Top. They've been a disaster. There is hope. Hope at the local place. You know, we've got teachers who know what to do. We need to quit coming up with programs and treating them like guinea pigs and see if they can produce. You know, that's crazy. Our local people, we have school boards. They know far better what to do than what they do in D.C. So if there is hope, it's not found up there. It's found in the local community districts.
I don't think none of us here today are former educators. Maybe you are, Senator, but we're not experts with regard to education. We're fortunate to have a good school system here in Knox County. Is there hope? I tend to think that our problems with schools relate back to the disintegration of the family in the household, and that creates problems in schools. So one way that we can hope to improve the quality of education is to provide choice. This voucher program will make public schools more competitive and hopefully improve them going forward.
Great. Thank you. We got this one now. Would any of you support legislation that would force people to receive vaccinations? Would you introduce legislation to nullify federal legislation if necessary? I'll start down here with Representative Smith.
On this one, I'm going to have to talk from my family experience. When my daughter was born, we almost lost her 3 days after she was born because of a freak infection in her blood system. Because of that, she's had a compromised immune system. Somebody can walk by our house with a flu and my daughter will pick it up. When I start thinking about children not having some of the vaccinations for these diseases, it concerns me about my daughter and her survivability. So while I don't want to force that on anyone, I think it's important for them to realize that the choices you make affect other people, and think about the children that may have those compromised immune systems and think about them.
You know, I think we're very fortunate to live in the United States of America where a lot of these diseases have disappeared. And if anyone thinks that polio just sort of went away for no reason, some of us are a little bit older. I remember my mother when I was about 5 years old. I was the oldest son, them tucking me into bed, and they weren't very sophisticated people. But we were having a polio epidemic in that summer. We weren't allowed to close the swimming pools. And I remember her, and she didn't understand polio, but she said, if you wake up and can't move your legs, you start hollering because you probably got polio. And that was her interpretation of it. But polio doesn't exist in this country hardly at all anymore because we have vaccinations. And it's the same thing with smallpox. We don't have smallpox anymore, but there's still diseases that kill people. I am not in favor of rescinding. I mean, I do believe that people should have certain choices, but not when it affects other people. And in anything you do that starts to affect the lives, particularly what Representative Smith just said, people not getting it affects the life of his child. And where it did come up this year dealt with the meningococcal vaccine. only with students, college students living in the dorms. If you don't want to live in the dorm, you don't. That vaccine's only about 60 or 70% effective, but if everyone gets it, then you protect everyone. If you don't get it, the two groups that can get the meningococcus is that there's different subspecies. We won't go into all of that, but it's people who are in military barracks together, and they're people who are living in college dorms together. And most of you haven't had to work in emergency rooms, but we've had, I remember a young student, 15 years old, football player at Fulton High School, that came into our hospital at St. Mary's, and he was dead within 24 hours of meningococcus. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. And, I think anyone that has you're allergic to it, you can't take it because you have a compromised immune system, shouldn't be getting, for medical reasons, I would exclude them. But other than that, I really think children need to be vaccinated. I know last winter we had 12 people die at St. Mary's from the flu. They were all under the age of 35. 3 of them were pregnant. And if you don't think all the ventilators were used up in East Tennessee, we had 3 ventilators at St. Mary's, 3. UT had none. Covenant System had none. They were moving patients from Virginia to our hospital because they had the flu. These are young people, under 35. And, we can say freedom's great, but it's not so great when it's one of your children that's dying because someone else didn't want to do something.
Vaccination, there's no doubt saves people. But the side effects of vaccinations kills people. It's a gamble. Do you want to take the vaccination and have a side effect and die? You don't hear much about these. It happens if you read. It's a gamble. And I'll leave you with this. The children belong to the parents, not the government.
This is a tough issue because you have potential public health issues that could arise if there's no vaccination. But on the other hand, I just don't like to tell people what they have to do. So I believe I wouldn't support any mandatory vaccinations simply because I think it should be a parent choice.
All of us are very thankful for science and technology that has saved lives, and I certainly am pleased that none of my children face polio, and I'm very thankful for that, and I dare say that vaccinations have saved countless lives. I would also tell you that there are vaccinations on this planet who have cost lives also. At the end of the day, all 5 of us that you see here have a rule book which we're supposed to play by. DC has a rule book by which they're supposed to play by. When we get out of the bounds of that rule book, just like in any game, you should be able to call foul and say you did something wrong. Unfortunately, in politics, that doesn't happen. The rule book that I'm speaking about is called our Tennessee Constitution. And the United States is called the U.S. Constitution. Nowhere in either Constitution do we have any right to force on you to do something for your child or do something to your child. The only where we might have a right is if you are actually physically beating them or hurting them or doing something like that. Obviously, government comes in because we put a premium on life. And if you're harming the life, we put a premium on that. Other than that, I personally think you're probably a little bit crazy if you're not given some of these good vaccines that can help you from getting polio or whatever else. But here's the deal. You have the right to be crazy. This is America. I mean, we have freedom. So as far as the government forcing you to do something like that, we have no right, no authority from the Constitution to force on you to do something.
And we get to our last question as we come back to something that came up in our very first question. So we come right back around. Radical Islamic extremism continues to rear its head in this country, and especially even here in Tennessee. It's something that's becoming an issue that we're all having to deal with, and it's something that's becoming a growing problem. What can we expect you, our legislators, to do about it?
That's a very good question, very important question to your life, especially though any of y'all who live close to Oak Ridge. I want to encourage you to tell you that radical extremism is not a religion. It's a political action outfit. And they want to take over the world. They want to have a thing called caliphate. They're not going to stop. The only thing that a terrorist Muslim understands is strength. they freak out when you come back hardcore with strength with them. And we in Tennessee have actually done some neat things. We have a thing called our Constitution. We passed a law. Our Constitution is the only thing allowed to be used in courts in Tennessee. So we're never going to have Sharia law unless they come and repeal that law. When it comes to fighting radical extremists, it's a partnership, not just with the state, but with the federal government. We need to start by getting rid of what we have in the White House and find a man who's willing to call a spade and stand up and fight what it is and be able to go against them. And then when it comes to here in the state, we need to be very vigilant. When we see people who are exercising, quote, freedom of speech, but that freedom of speech is a professor saying how we need to get rid of the infidel, you've crossed the line of freedom of speech and you've crossed the line to incite people to kill someone. So we need to be very vigilant and realize that this is a serious enemy that's not going away.
I guess if anyone knew the answer to that question, we wouldn't have the problem now. So I can tell you that in the last term of the legislature, we passed a law that enabled persons who are injured by terrorist acts to have a private right of action against the terrorists and any organizations they're associated with. It allowed the injured person to take property of a terrorist. I can tell you I am not in favor of increased surveillance to uncover terrorists and prevent their acts. It's a tough question. Maybe we need to cut back on the numbers of immigrants in this country. I don't know. That might be something to look at. But frankly, I just don't have the answer. We'll continue looking.
I think we need to repeal Teddy Kennedy's 1965 Immigration Act that shifted the emphasis on immigration from productive people to undocumented immigrants.
I think the question was, what have we personally done, or what have we done about this? And I can tell you, I've had 3 overseas tours where I have gone and looked face to face and eye to eye with senior members of Al Qaeda, with the Taliban. I've had 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan, so that's one of the things that I've done that I don't think anybody else up here has done. The other thing that I've done is, and you may have seen it in the paper last week, I went to the Homeland Security briefing that we got from the Tennessee Homeland Security Commissioner and General Haston, who is the commander of the Tennessee National Guard. They, through executive order, are now allowing members of the Tennessee National Guard who have carry permits to carry personal weapons on Tennessee National Guard property to protect themselves. What they didn't have is any immunity or personal liability protection, so if they did get into a shootout with terrorists, they would have no protection against that. If they damaged property or cars or, heaven forbid, someone else, they would be personally liable, just like any permit holder is. But I have legislation, and it was in the paper last week, that I filed that if it is a terrorist event, they will have immunity and they will have protection from any personal liability.
A lot of times we are very reactive when things happen. Chattanooga, we're being reactive in the fact that we're now allowing them to carry guns. Why didn't they have it in the first place? I know they're wanting to try and change a lot of the windows and put the film on them so they become more bullet resistant. Why wasn't that done in the first place? Why haven't we put some of the things that don't infringe upon your rights by spying, but we can do some things to help protect? So I think we're going to have to stop thinking about it from a reactive standpoint and start thinking about it from a proactive standpoint of how we can mitigate some of these instances. Unfortunately, it's we want to think it's just a few years old that this has been going on, but it's been going on for centuries. It boils down to just a family conflict. You have to trace it back. The Arabs go through Ishmael and the Jews go through Isaac. Isaac and Ishmael, both the descendants of Abraham. So it goes back to a family conflict that we've inserted ourselves in. And there's no easy solution. So I think we've got to find a way to protect our citizens through all means possible, just to make sure that we can mitigate that. And I think we're going to have to think about, the leaders that we have in Washington and what is their vision for trying to help solve this in the foreign realm. Pulling back and saying we're just not going to be involved at all probably hasn't worked, and being overly involved hasn't worked. So where's the healthy balance in that of trying to help just keep them from killing us, killing themselves, and mitigating that, not allowing radical Islam just to continue to march across the Middle East as it's done. So I would love to sit here and say I have the answer. I think if I did, I'd be running for a different office with the other 36 people in the Republican Party. But I don't, and I don't think any of us do, but I think as a collective society that we can come up with those solutions. We've solved some of the greatest problems in society when we've worked together. And I think this is one of those issues where we're all going to have to work together to come up with a solution.
Well, there you go. Representatives Faisons, Daniel, Smith, Senators Nicely and Briggs. Real leaders are the ones that stand before the people and answer their questions and open themselves up to criticism. We appreciate you all being real leaders today. Thank you very much for being part of this. Thank you all for taking part in your government. Everyone have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next time.
And also, we have, I forgot to say this when we first started the event, Representatives Martin Daniel and Eddie Smith, along with Senator Dr. Briggs, they're all new this year, and they've done a fine job, along with Senators Nicely and Representative Faison. So, I mean, in your first year, you did good. Keep up the good work next year, and hopefully we'll do this again.